Here's a paradox worth sitting with. In a world where we take gravity for granted every moment of our lives, where we barely notice its presence until we trip over a curb or spill coffee on our lap, the very force that keeps our feet on the ground is also the force that binds stars, shapes galaxies, and holds the cosmos together. Gravity is both mundane and miraculous. It is the tug that fastens your shoes to the floor and the architect of black holes that swallow light itself. And yet, in all our daily awareness, we almost never pause to ask the question, what if it stopped? What if gravity, the silent force we never thank, never acknowledge, simply turned off one day? It sounds absurd, like a thought experiment you might daydream about in a classroom, doodling in the margins of your notebook. But to ask it is to reveal how fragile, how dependent, how impossibly fortunate our existence really is. Because without gravity, not only would we not survive the Earth, the Sun, the entire universe, as we know it, would unravel into chaos. So let us begin, as all good thought experiments do, at the edge of imagination. Let us ask sincerely, what if gravity suddenly stopped working on Earth? The moment gravity stops, there is no warning, no flicker of lights, no tremor beneath your feet. One instant you're standing still, the next your body is in motion, not because you've jumped, but because the Earth has. You see, gravity is what pins you to the planet as it spins. Right now, as you listen, you are traveling with the Earth's rotation nearly 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, slower at the poles. Gravity keeps you tethered. But if that tether vanishes, you don't stop. Your body continues moving at that 1,000-mile-an-hour speed. Cars lift off roads. Oceans lift off their basins. Entire cities rise like dust shaken from a rug. And here's the kicker. The atmosphere doesn't stay behind either. The air we breathe is bound to Earth by gravity too. If gravity ceased, the very air would peel away, drifting into space like smoke from an extinguished fire. You wouldn't even have time to gasp. In shock, your lungs would be robbed of their air before you could scream. In the first seconds, the world becomes unrecognizable, and then it becomes uninhabitable. Why is this so? Because gravity isn't just a downward pull, it is the glue of existence. Think about your body, your weight, your muscles, your bones. They developed under gravity. Without it, astronauts in orbit experience bone loss, muscle atrophy, weakened cardiovascular systems. They train for months, even years, to endure a fraction of gravity's absence, and they still struggle. Now imagine that absence on Earth suddenly, completely, irreversibly, but the collapse of biology is only the beginning. Planets exist because of gravity. The Earth coalesced from dust and gas 4.5 billion years ago because particles pull together under gravity's embrace. Mountains rise, rivers flow downhill, oceans pool in basins, all because of this invisible hand. Remove it, and the Earth itself begins to disintegrate. The core, the mantle, the crust, no longer pressed into cohesion, drift apart. The moon, freed from Earth's pull, sails off into the void. The Earth ceases to be a planet. It becomes a cloud. Gravity, it turns out, is not just a background force. It is the stagehands, the script, and the glue of the entire play. And here is where the thought experiment deepens. Gravity is not only Earth's caretaker, it is the force that allows the sun to burn. Without it, hydrogen atoms in the sun's core would never be crushed together tightly enough to fuse. Without fusion, there is no sunlight, no warmth, no energy. The sun itself exists because gravity holds its mass together against the outward push of nuclear fire. Zoom out further. Galaxies spiral because of gravity. Stars cluster because of it. Black holes form because gravity wins the eternal tug of war against light. Gravity is the artist of structure in the universe. Without it, the cosmos is reduced to dust, scattered, cold, unformed. And so the thought experiment becomes philosophical. If gravity vanished, the universe wouldn't just collapse. It would never have existed at all. Life, intelligence, history, curiosity, none of it. To ask what if gravity stopped working is to glimpse how improbable, how contingent, how miraculous it is that we are here at all. But notice something. Even now, as you hear this, gravity is holding you steady. It has been with you since the day you were born, shaping the way you grew, the way you walk, the way you sleep. It has never failed you, not once, not for a second. And yet, how often do you thank it? We thank electricity when the lights come back on after a storm. We thank medicine when it heals us. We thank technology when it entertains us. But gravity? It is so constant, so reliable, so invisible that it escapes gratitude altogether. It is, in this sense, like so many forces in human life, unnoticed until absent. Trust, stability, peace. We rarely thank them while they are here. But when they vanish, the world collapses. This is the hidden lesson of our thought experiment. Gravity's absence reveals not only how much we rely on physics, but how much we rely on each other. So ask yourself, if gravity, the most constant of all forces, could hypothetically disappear, what else do we take for granted? What invisible stabilizers in society hold us together in ways we barely notice? Is it trust in institutions? Is it compassion for strangers? Is it the rule of law, the reliability of infrastructure, the unwritten agreements that keep billions of people from descending into chaos each day? Like gravity, these forces rarely make headlines when they work. They only make headlines when they fail. And by then, it's often too late. So perhaps the true value of asking, what if gravity stopped, is not in physics alone. It is in realizing how fragile the taken for granted really is. How much of our survival rests not on what is visible, but on what is invisible, silent, constant. The absence of gravity on Earth would be devastating. Oceans would boil into space, atmospheres would vanish, mountains would crumble. But what if the absence of gravity wasn't limited to Earth? What if it stopped working everywhere, universally, simultaneously across the cosmos? The result would not be a catastrophe. It would be an erasure. Stars, no longer held together, would explode outward in silence. Galaxies would dissolve into mist. Black holes would vanish in an instant, releasing whatever they once held captive. The universe would not collapse. It would scatter, as though an orchestra lost its conductor mid-performance and every instrument played in chaos. And here lies the paradox. If gravity could disappear, then nothing would exist to disappear in the first place. Because gravity is not a latecomer to the story, it is the opening line. It is what allowed hydrogen atoms to gather, stars to ignite, galaxies to swirl. The cosmos itself is a sculpture chiseled by gravity's hand. Without it, there is no stage, no play, no actors, no audience. To ask what if gravity stopped is to realize that the universe we know is not inevitable. It is conditional. Conditional on balances so perfect, forces so reliable that we forget they are miracles at all. But the story grows stranger still. Because gravity doesn't just shape space, it shapes time. Einstein taught us this in 1915 with his general theory of relativity. He showed that gravity is not a force in the Newtonian sense, an invisible tug between masses, but the warping of space-time itself. Imagine laying a bowling ball on a trampoline. The fabric dips. Place a marble nearby, and it rolls toward the ball, not because the ball pulls it, but because the marble follows the curve in the fabric. That's what gravity is, the curvature of space-time caused by mass and energy. Now stretch that metaphor further. On a trampoline, the fabric is only space. In Einstein's vision, the fabric is space and time, which means gravity doesn't just pull objects, it slows clocks. This is not poetry. This is experiment. Astronauts orbiting Earth, where gravity is weaker, age slightly faster than their twins on the surface. Clocks on satellites tick differently than clocks on Earth, and we must correct for this difference daily, or GPS would fail. Gravity is not only the sculptor of space, it is the editor of time. So when we ask, what if gravity stopped working, we are not only asking about falling apples and drifting planets, we are asking about time itself. Without gravity, time would unspool differently. The very rhythm of existence would change. The world wouldn't just collapse, it would lose its tempo. And yet, think of how long it took humanity to begin grasping any of this. Aristotle believed heavy objects fall faster than light ones. It seemed obvious, but it was wrong. Centuries later, Galileo climbed the Leaning Tower of Pisa, or so the story goes, and dropped two spheres of different weights. They landed together. Gravity, it seemed, did not discriminate. Then came Newton in 1687 with an apple tree as his muse. Whether literal or legendary, he described a universe where the same force that pulled an apple to the ground kept the moon in orbit and the planets circling the Sunday. Gravity was universal. It didn't care if you were an apple or a planet. It applied everywhere, equally. Newton's equations explained tides, eclipses, the motion of comets. They were so precise that for centuries, they seemed final. Gravity was no longer a mystery. It was a solved problem. Until Einstein came along and revealed that Newton was only an approximation, a beautiful, practical one, but incomplete. Gravity was not a force at all. It was geometry, space-time itself bending around mass. And just like that, the cosmos deepened. The universe was no longer a machine running on invisible strings, but a fabric, alive with curvature, capable of bending light, slowing time, and creating black holes. Each step, from Aristotle's mistaken assumptions to Galileo's experiments, from Newton's apple to Einstein's spacetime, was a new way of listening to gravity's voice. And with each new way, our sense of place in the cosmos shifted. We went from thinking Earth was the center of the universe to thinking Earth was one planet among many, to realizing that even time and space are not constants, but flexible, malleable, conditional. And all of it comes back to gravity, the force so constant we forget it exists. The sculptor so silent we forget to thank it. But here's the reflection worth making. Gravity's story is not only about physics, it is also a parable about human life. We too are shaped by invisible forces: culture, trust, cooperation, empathy. These are not written in equations, but they are every bit as real. They bend our lives as surely as gravity bends space-time. And like gravity, they are easy to ignore. We notice them most when they fail. When trust collapses, societies unravel. When empathy falters, cruelty spreads. When cooperation vanishes, civilizations fall apart. We live day by day as though these invisible forces are guaranteed, but they are not. They require awareness. They require stewardship. So perhaps in asking, what if gravity stopped? We are also asking, what if the social forces that hold us together stopped? What if empathy stopped working? What if trust vanished? What if cooperation fell apart? The result would be just as catastrophic as the collapse of the physical world. Gravity is a reminder, written in the stars, that invisible does not mean optional, that silence does not mean absence, that the most important forces in existence are often the ones we take most for granted. To understand gravity, not as an abstract idea, but as a lived experience, you only need to look at astronauts, because they are the rare humans who have lived in its absence, at least partially. When astronauts enter orbit, they don't escape Earth's gravity. They are still inside it, still bound to the planet. What they experience is microgravity, the illusion of weightlessness caused by perpetual freefall. They are falling around the Earth, forever missing it. And in that endless fall, their bodies begin to tell us a story about what life is without gravity. The first thing astronauts notice is floating. A coffee cup drifts instead of staying put. A pen hovers in the air. A simple sneeze can send your body spinning. Delightful at first, frustrating later. But deeper changes occur beneath the surface. Bones, no longer under pressure, begin to lose density. Muscles atrophy, no longer needing to push against weight. The cardiovascular system weakens. Fluids shift upward, puffing the face and pressing on the eyes. Even balance and orientation senses honed over millions of years under gravity become confused, leading to space sickness. What astronauts endure in months, humanity would endure in hours if gravity suddenly stopped on Earth. Our bodies are tuned to this force. Without it, we unravel. And this fact reveals something profound. We don't just live under gravity. We live with it. Gravity is not an external condition. It is part of who we are. That our skeletons, our muscles, our very biology is sculpted by its embrace. Remove it. And you don't just change the environment, you change us. And yet, for as long as humans have gazed at the stars, we have dreamed of escaping it. Gravity is the jailer of Earth. To leave the planet, to climb out of its grip, requires extraordinary effort. Rockets burn with thunderous fire just to lift a small payload into orbit. Each launch is a defiance of gravity, a reminder that our place on Earth is not guaranteed but enforced. The history of the space age is, in many ways, the history of learning to negotiate with gravity. First, to overcome it with rockets. Then, to live without it in orbit. Next, to simulate it with centrifuges or habitats that spin, creating artificial gravity through rotation. And one day, perhaps, to master it in ways we cannot yet imagine, bending it, shaping it, even harnessing it. But for now, gravity remains a stubborn companion. Too weak, and we waste away. Too strong, and we are trapped. Just right, and life flourishes. Consider our future as explorers. On the moon, gravity is 1/6 that of Earth. On Mars, it is about 1/3. Both are weaker than we evolved for, but stronger than orbit's microgravity. Could we thrive there long term? Could children grow up healthy on Mars, their bones and muscles developing under a weaker pull? Or would humanity fracture into subspecies, Earth adapted and Mars adapted, no longer interchangeable? Gravity, silent and invisible, may determine the fate of our expansion into space. It is not just a background condition. It is a filter deciding who thrives, who adapts, and who fails. And yet, there is another layer. Gravity has always been a metaphor for our deepest struggles. We speak of heavy responsibilities, of feeling weighed down, of carrying burdens. We long for weightlessness not only in body but in spirit. The dream of floating is as much emotional as it is physical. When astronauts describe the overview effect, the awe of seeing Earth from orbit, they often speak of liberation, not just from national borders, but from the weight of perspective. They see Earth as one world, one fragile sphere, suspended in the dark. Gravity, in that moment, feels both binding and irrelevant. And perhaps this is why we are so fascinated by the thought experiment of gravity vanishing. Because it is not only a scientific scenario, it is a psychological one. What if we were freed from the burdens that weigh us down, responsibilities, fears, conflicts? Would we float joyfully? Or would we discover, as with physics, that weight is part of what makes us whole? For without gravity, our bodies decay. And without responsibility, our societies decay. The metaphor is clear. Weight gives meaning. Pressure gives form. Gravity is not only a constraint, it is also a sculptor. And here is the deepest truth. Gravity is universal. It respects no borders, no languages, no ideologies. The same pull that holds your body to the Earth holds the moon in orbit, the planets in motion, the stars in their spirals. It is the most democratic of forces, treating all mass equally. A feather and a hammer fall side by side on the moon, as Apollo astronauts demonstrated. A grain of dust and a mountain are equally embraced by Earth's pull. In this sense, gravity is a cosmic reminder of equality, that despite our illusions of separation, we are all subject to the same laws, all bound by the same force, all tethered to the same world. And if the absence of gravity would unravel our existence, then perhaps the absence of justice, compassion, or responsibility would do the same for our civilization. The physics is profound, but the metaphor may be even more so. Take neutron stars. These are the collapsed cores of massive stars, remnants of supernovae. Picture something larger than our sun, squeezed into a sphere barely the size of a city. The density is so great that a teaspoon of neutron star material would weigh more than Mount Everest. On such a world, Gravity is not a background condition, it is a tyrant. The pull is so fierce that if you could somehow stand on the surface, you'd be crushed instantly, your body flattened thinner than a sheet of paper. Yet paradoxically, neutron stars also reveal gravity's rhythm. Many rotate rapidly, sending out beams of radiation that sweep across space like cosmic lighthouses. We detect them as pulsars, their signals so regular that they rival the precision of atomic clocks. Here is gravity, both cruel and beautiful. It crushes matter into states beyond imagination, and in doing so, creates cosmic beacons that help us navigate the universe. And then there are black holes, the places where gravity wins outright. Here, space-time bends so completely that not even light can escape. Cross the event horizon and you are lost, drawn inevitably inward. The mathematics tells us that inside lies a singularity, a point where density becomes infinite and our laws of physics collapse. Black holes are paradoxes made real. They are places where time slows to a crawl, where space folds, where reality itself seems to protest. And yet, black holes are not mere destroyers. They are also creators. Collisions of black holes send gravitational waves rippling across the universe, signals that we now detect with our instruments on Earth. Entire galaxies may revolve around supermassive black holes, their gravity shaping the orbits of billions of stars. Once again, gravity reveals its dual nature. The same force that annihilates also organizes. The same pull that devours light also structures galaxies. It is tempting to think of gravity as a brute force, a mindless tug. But look closer, and it becomes a storyteller. From the way galaxies spin, we infer the existence of dark matter, invisible to us except through its gravitational pull. From the way light bends around clusters of galaxies, we map the shape of space-time itself. From the whispers of gravitational waves, we reconstruct the violent unions of black holes billions of years ago. Gravity tells us about things we cannot otherwise see. It gives form to the invisible. And perhaps this is why it fascinates us so deeply, because it mirrors our own lives. We too are shaped by forces we cannot always see. Forces of culture, history, family, and fate. We may not always perceive them directly, but their influence is written into the trajectories of our lives. Gravity is the universe's reminder that the unseen is often the most powerful. But black holes also remind us of our limits. For all our equations, for all our triumphs, there are places where our knowledge collapses. The singularity at the heart of a black hole is not just a physical mystery, it is a philosophical one. It is where human understanding itself is bent to breaking. What does it mean to live in a universe that contains mysteries we may never solve? For some, it is humbling. For others, frustrating. For me, it is a source of wonder, because a universe without mysteries would be a dead one. Curiosity requires unknowns, meaning requires frontiers. The singularity is not a failure. It is an invitation. And again, we find the metaphor. In human life, too, there are singularities places where knowledge collapses, where certainty ends, where we are left only with questions, death, consciousness, the origins of meaning. We probe these mysteries with philosophy, religion, art, and science. But like black holes, they resist final answers. And maybe that is the point. Maybe the value lies not in solving them, but in living with them, in letting them pull us, stretch us, humble us. Gravity is not just a physical force. It is a mirror for our existential condition. It holds us, crushes us, liberates us, and confronts us with the limits of our knowing. So now the thought experiment deepens. What if gravity stopped working not just on Earth, but in these extremes? The neutron stars would dissipate, their crushing density undone. Black holes would unravel, their singularities dissolving into nothingness. The universe's most dramatic characters would vanish, but what would be left? A universe without black holes is a universe without the whispers of gravitational waves. A universe without neutron stars is a universe without pulsars marking time. A universe without gravity is a universe without story. We do not often think of physics as narrative, but that is what it is. A story told in motion, in structure, in rhythm. Without gravity, the story ends. And so, once again, we are brought back to gratitude, that this invisible force has not stopped, that it holds the earth beneath our feet, the moon in the sky, the sun in its fire, the galaxy in its spiral. We owe everything to gravity, and yet we barely think of it. Perhaps that is its greatest lesson, that the most important forces in physics in life are the ones we almost never notice until they are gone. We began with a paradox. Gravity, the most constant of all forces, is also the least appreciated. It is the silent companion that never fails us, until we imagine what would happen if it did. That thought experiment revealed just how fragile our existence is and how much we depend on what we rarely notice. We explored what would happen to Earth if gravity vanished. Oceans boiling into space, air peeling away, bodies unraveling. We saw how gravity holds stars together, how it sculpts galaxies, how it bends time itself. We followed astronauts into orbit, where its absence reshapes their bones, their muscles, their hearts. We plunged into extremes, neutron stars, black holes where gravity becomes tyrant and teacher, destroyer, and storyteller. And through it all, one truth emerged. Gravity is not just a physical force, it is a metaphor. Because just as gravity holds planets, invisible forces hold societies. Trust, empathy, responsibility. These two are unseen. These two are easy to ignore. These two only make headlines when they fail. What if gravity stopped working? The Earth would collapse. What if empathy stopped working? Civilization would collapse. The parallel is almost too clear. Just as stars are sculpted by pressure and pull, so are we sculpted by the weight of duty, by the pull of connection. Remove them and we dissolve. When humanity first defied gravity and launched to the moon, it was framed as a contest. Rockets against rockets, flags against flags. But when astronauts looked back at Earth, they didn't see competition. They saw unity. The photograph of Earthrise, our small, fragile planet rising above the barren moon, became one of the most powerful images ever taken. For the first time, we saw ourselves not as nations, but as one species, bound together on a single world. Gravity may tether us to Earth, but perspective untethers us from illusions. The space race gave us more than rockets. It gave us a mirror. And now, as we imagine the absence of gravity, we are reminded again, perspective changes everything. Here is the paradox of being human. We are fragile, yet powerful. Fragile because our survival depends on balances so delicate, a thin atmosphere, a stable climate, a constant gravity. Powerful because we can imagine their absence, study their nature, and even leave the planet that birthed us. No other known species has done this. No other known species has felt the weight of gravity and then chosen to defy it. We are fragile enough to need the Earth, but powerful enough to leave it. That duality is not a weakness. It is our story. And so the thought experiment ends not with despair, but with responsibility. We know now that gravity has never failed us. It is constant, impartial, universal. Can we say the same about the forces we create: justice, compassion, cooperation? Can we make them as reliable as gravity? Because unlike physics, these forces are not given. They are chosen. They depend not on mass and motion, but on will and wisdom. The universe has shown us its laws. The question is whether we will live by ours. So tonight, when you walk outside and feel your feet pressed against the ground, remember, that sensation is not trivial. It is the universe itself holding you close, whispering through an invisible embrace, you belong here. And when you see the moon in the sky, remember, it is not floating aimlessly. It is tethered to us, as we are tethered to it, as all things are tethered to one another by forces unseen. Gravity has never stopped working. And perhaps its greatest gift is the reminder that we too must never stop working to hold each other, to steady civilization, to bind our fragile world together against the chaos that waits without. Because if gravity stopped working, the Earth would vanish into dust. And if responsibility stopped working, humanity would vanish into history. But if both endure gravity in the cosmos and responsibility in ourselves, then perhaps one day, when future generations step off this world and into the stars, they will look back and say, they were not destroyed by the weight, they were defined by it, they carried it well, and because they carried it, we are here. The universe gave us gravity. The rest is up to us. So let's turn that weight into a compass. If gravity keeps matter honest, then responsibility keeps meaning honest. Responsibility is the human version of curvature. It bends our choices toward consequences. You can ignore it for a while, just as you can pretend a cliff doesn't exist, but the ground truth returns with interest. The most reliable feedback loop in the universe is reality. Consider the quiet choreography that lets a jet cross an ocean at night. The pilots trust instruments they can't see, engineers they'll never meet, and satellite signals that correct for relativity so precisely that a nanosecond of error would nudge a runway into the wrong place. The whole endeavor is an ode to invisible forces, physical and social, aligned on purpose. If one link defects from responsibility, lives become statistics. If each link accepts the weight, strangers land safely and write postcards. Same physics. Different maturity. That distinction between power and maturity is the hinge of our century. We sit at a table where the menu includes gene editing, synthetic intelligence, geoengineering, asteroid mining, and the power to alter climates, cultures, even the meaning of human. We used to be passengers on a planetary ride. Now we're learning where the cockpit is. And the first rule of flight school is painfully simple. Ability without accountability is just acceleration toward a wall. So let's practice a habit the universe has already mastered: calibration. Stars, after all, are balanced tantrums, gravity compressing, fusion pushing back each second, a negotiation that yields light. Too little compression and a star never ignites. Too much and it collapses into a remnant that hoards its own story. Civilizations are no different. Without pressure expectations, standards, responsibility, we never ignite. With only pressure, fear, domination, cynicism, we implode. The art is to run hot enough to shine, cool enough to endure. History is a lab notebook full of calibration attempts. The Magna Carta, recalibrating power, the scientific method, recalibrating certainty, the abolition movement, recalibrating who counts as fully human, the space treaties that declared the moon the province of all humankind, recalibrating ambition so flags don't become fences. None of these were gifts from the cosmos. They were edits we made to our own moral geometry. And edits await us still. We talk about climate as if it were a debate staged on a network set. The climate is a coupled system, a stenographer, not a pundit taking dictation from physics. Add greenhouse gases, trap heat, dissolve reefs in acidifying seas, unlace food webs, melt land ice, rewrite coastlines. This is gravity's cousin, entropy, clearing its throat. The math doesn't care which party you favor or which meme you repost. Our only lever is responsibility scaled to the size of our influence. What can I do, we ask, as if the only meaningful actions are heroic. But the cosmos reminds us that structure emerges from modest interactions repeated honestly. Galaxies assemble grain by grain. Ecosystems stabilize through patient feedback. The forces that win are not loud, they are relentless. So start where gravity starts, locally. Vote, but also verify. Learn, but also teach. Don't outsource curiosity to algorithms designed to harvest attention the way a black hole harvests light. Read across disagreement the way a photon skirts a galaxy bent, but not captured. Build habits that compound. Skepticism with humility, conviction with revision, ambition with stewardship. None of that trends. All of it works. And because I promised a fifth dimension, here it is, not a literal axis beyond space and time, but a human one that passes through both. Awareness. Awareness is the coordinate that upgrades sensation into understanding, information into wisdom, motion into meaning. You've met it before. It's the difference between looking and seeing, hearing and listening. existing and living on purpose. Awareness thickens time. It lets a minute with a loved one weigh more than an hour of doom scrolling. It lets a blue marble rising over a gray horizon reorder the priorities of a species. Awareness curbs our favorite cosmic illusion, that we are separate. In mechanics, separation is a convenience, a way to write equations for one mass at a time. But in reality, nothing is truly isolated. Atoms entangle, ecosystems interlock, economies intertwine. The air in your lungs today was in someone else's lungs last year, and in a maple leaf the year before that, and in a comet long before your ancestors named the sky. Awareness makes that obvious. Responsibility makes it actionable. What does that look like on Mondays at 8 a.m.? It looks like designing cities that treat clean air as infrastructure, not a luxury. It looks like rewarding truth even when it's inconvenient to profit, and refusing to turn every public square into a marketplace that sells outrage by the click. It looks like building institutions with gravitational assists, policies that sling people toward their better outcomes the way a spacecraft steals speed from a planet's pull. Scholarships are gravitational assist. Public libraries are. Vaccines are. So are honest metrics and transparent budgets and leaders who prefer course correction to victory laps. And because we are storytellers, let's use the best kind of story, one that includes the outtakes. The Apollo program gave us triumph, yes, but also fire on a launch pad that killed 3 astronauts and forced a redesign that saved others. Responsibility did that, not blame, not denial, not the theater of outrage. Engineers listened to the physics and to one another. They added the weight of caution and earned the lift of confidence. The lesson scales. If a team can change the moon mission by changing a gasket, a city can change its destiny by changing a habit. I often get asked, where is hope? Hope is not an emotion you wait to feel. It's a discipline you practice. In orbital mechanics, a tiny delta V, an engine burn of a few meters per second executed at the right moment, changes your destination by a planet. In civic mechanics, a tiny delta V showing up, speaking up, teaming up executed consistently, changes culture by a generation. Hope is scheduled courage. Let me be clear. None of this cancels grief or inequality or the algebra of loss. The universe contains supernovas and seedlings, predators, and parentheses where names used to be. Responsibility doesn't erase tragedy. It gives us a lever to move something in its presence. Gravity doesn't erase chaos. It sculpts it into orbits we can navigate. And there will be days when the weight feels unfair. Those are precisely the days to remember why we train. Astronauts rehearse emergencies until muscle memory outruns panic. Musicians practice scales so rigor stays on call when inspiration misses rehearsal. Citizens can do the same, practice the small civic virtues, fact-checking, bridge building, apology, revision, so they're available precisely when fear would prefer an easier story. If you doubt whether this matters, recall the most audacious experiment we've ever run as a species. We strapped ourselves to towers of oxygen and fire, and we left home. We planted footprints in powder that hasn't known rain in 4 billion years. Then we turned around and took a picture of where we came from. The whole human archive, our wars and symphonies, our alphabets and lullabies compressed into a marble small enough to hide behind your thumb. Gravity held that marble together. Awareness made it precious. Responsibility made it shareable. In that sequence lies our mandate. So here is a simple test to carry into the week, a pocket accelerometer for the soul. Before you speak, post, vote, hire, design, or decide, ask, does this increase the mass of truth in the system? Does it deepen trust, widen access, strengthen the fabric that lets strangers cooperate at scale? If the answer is yes, proceed. If the answer is no, may you feel the tug of responsibility the way you feel the tug of Earth at your heels, quiet, constant, persuasive. Because our children will inherit more than our inventions. They will inherit our defaults. They will live inside the orbits we set. And when they ask us why we curve their future this way and not that, I want us to have better answers than it was profitable, it was trending, or it was easy. I want us to say, we aimed by the stars and trimmed by the truth. We chose the weight that makes people stronger, not smaller. We carried it together. One day sooner than our myths predict someone will step onto Mars and look up at a salmon sky. They will think of ancient deserts on Earth and of ancestors who crossed oceans in wooden nerves with canvas courage. They will feel a weaker gravity and a stronger bond. And when they sleep in a dome that hums like a distant seashell, they will dream of rivers we kept clean, forests we let grow old, cities we tuned to human scales, and institutions we bent towards service until trust felt as natural as sunrise. When they wake, they will lace boots designed by engineers who learned from mistakes that cost lives and from victories that saved them. They will walk to a window and watch a small blue bead rise where a sun once did. They will place a hand on the glass and feel nothing, no air, no breeze, no warmth, just the pure absence that makes presence meaningful. And across that absence, across those millions of kilometers, a relay of responsibilities will hold. Because that's the fifth dimension revealed. Awareness braided with responsibility into a geometry of care that spans distance and time. It's the through line from a child learning to say, I was wrong, to a scientist publishing a null result. From a city funding a bus lane to a farmer leaving a strip of wildflowers for pollinators. From a coder refusing a dark pattern to a leader refusing a cheap applause line. It's the manifold where facts and values meet, the space where truth acquires gravity. So tonight, feel the weight on your feet and welcome it. Let it remind you that you are not an accident drifting through a careless void. You are a participant in a lawful universe, entrusted with levers that reach further than your lifetime. Make your corner of space-time kinder. Make your slice of history sturdier. Pass down habits that make strangers safer with one another. If we do that, if we honor the physics that made us and the ethics that might yet refine us, then the space race becomes something richer than a contest. It becomes a covenant, not to beat an adversary to a rock, but to meet our potential on a timeline that respects both science and soul. We will still count down. We will still light engines, but the mission patch will include more than a flag. It will include a planet. And when the boosters fall away and the capsule clears the tower, listen for a sound beneath the roar, the hush of a species choosing to grow up. That is the music of a world that kept faith with its own future, a world that made its social forces as reliable as gravity. In that key, the finale writes itself. We measured the universe and found our place within it. Then we measured ourselves and found room to improve. We learned that gravity binds the stars and responsibility binds the story. We refused the ease of weightlessness when weight was needed, and we refused the tyranny of weight when lift was possible. We made light. And because we did, when our descendants look back across the dark and point to this century, they won't see a civilization that floated away from its burdens. They'll see one that carried them with wit, with humility, with intelligence until the burdens became bridges. The universe gave us gravity. We chose to give it meaning. And so the story arcs outward. From the weight beneath our feet to the weight upon our conscience, the same lesson endures. It is the unseen that shapes the scene. Gravity holds the stars, but responsibility holds the story of humanity. The future will not ask us what tools we had it. We'll ask how we use them. It will not measure us by the rockets we built, but by the wisdom that guided their launch. It will not remember us for the power we wielded, but for the responsibility we carried. We stand now at a hinge in history, a species aware of its fragility yet powerful enough to alter its trajectory. That awareness is our fifth dimension. That responsibility is our gravity. So let us walk forward, not weightless, but grounded. Let us step into the cosmos, not as wanderers fleeing a home, but as caretakers extending its story. Let us make our presence in the universe not only known, but worthy. For if gravity is the universe's promise to hold us, then our promise must be to hold each other. And if we can do that faithfully, relentlessly, silently, when necessary, then no darkness, no void, no frontier will ever undo us. Because the weight we carry together is not a burden. It is the very thing that makes us capable of flight. Let classrooms become launch pads where questions have escape velocity. Let laboratories practice the humility of revision, where a negative result is not a failure, but an improved map. Let boardrooms remember that quarterly gravity cannot outweigh planetary gravity. Let legislatures design for the long arc, not the next headline. Let kitchens, buses, farm fields, and factory floors be the quiet observatories where everyday stewardship takes its measurements. The cosmos is not asking us to be perfect. It is asking us to be precise about what matters. We are, each of us, mission control for a small patch of Earth monitoring signals, correcting drift, choosing when to burn, when to coast, and when to change orbit entirely. And like every successful mission, we proceed by checklists we can keep. Tell the truth even when it's inconvenient. Share credit even when it's tempting. Learn the names of the people whose work you depend on. Protect what can't protect itself. Leave more possibility than you found. Remember, the universe has already shown us the operating instructions. Balance makes stars. Feedback stabilizes systems. Diversity strengthens networks. Energy follows gradients, and attention is a kind of energy, so spend it where it increases life. If you want a civilization worthy of the night sky, tune its instruments the way you tune a telescope, reduce the noise, widen the aperture, and point it at wonder. And when the noise swells as it will look up, somewhere, a pulsar keeps time with a fidelity that humbles our clocks. Somewhere, a gravitational wave collapses a billion-year secret into a whisper that crosses the void to touch a mirror on Earth. Somewhere, a comet completes a patient ellipse that began before your great-grandparents had names. These are not distant curiosities. They are reminders that fidelity, patience, and quiet force can move worlds. So here's our closing burn, the maneuver that sets our course. Treat responsibility as propulsion, not ballast. Treat awareness as guidance, not decoration. Treat one another as co-navigators, not cargo. Let the space race be repurposed from racing each other to racing our worst impulses, from planting flags to planting futures, from conquering distance to mastering perspective. If we do, the fifth dimension awareness braided with responsibility will not be a metaphor, but a habitat. Our children will breathe it the way we breathe air. They will inherit cities that bend toward belonging, economies that price the future fairly, ecosystems that sing in resilient harmony. They will read our century the way astronomers read starlight. Not as noise, but as signal. Not as waste heat, but as illumination. And one quiet night, under a sky so old it feels new, they will gather at the edge of a world we once only imagined. Above them, constellations will still tell their ancient stories. Below them, the ground will still answer with its faithful pull. Between those two certainties, they will speak our name with gratitude not for our fearlessness, but for our care. Because in the end, that is how a species becomes worthy of the cosmos, not by escaping its gravity, but by learning to carry its own. We came here to wonder whether a silent force could vanish, and learned instead that its constancy is our cue. Gravity holds the stars. Let us hold the promise. If the universe offers laws that do not flinch, may we offer virtues that do not fail, truth that does not bend for convenience, compassion that does not thin at distance, responsibility that does not wait for applause. Count with me, not from 10 to launch, but from 1 to purpose. One choice, repeated, one habit kept, one stranger welcomed, one truth protected. That is how civilizations light engines. And when the histories are written in the cool ink of hindsight, let them say that in an age when we could have floated away from our burdens, we chose to carry them together, and carrying them, we rose. The fifth dimension revealed is simply this: awareness with responsibility made daily. That is how we give gravity meaning, how we turn weight into lift, how we make a planet worthy of the stars that cradle it. So step outside, feel the pull, and answer back with your best work. The universe has done its part. Now so do we.